I'm going to be using the live video a lot more because it allows me to share some information that I'll have prepared, or some screens or websites and so forth. But I kind of wanted to kind of use today a little bit to catechize people, uh, to help you along the spiritual life, because so many people, they have a conversion and they want to do a lot of things, but uh, there's a lot of wisdom in the church that we haven't been feeding people with, very, very, very sadly. And so it's to draw out this wisdom into the church so that we can build ourselves up as better men, women, uh, and advance quicker along the spiritual life. And the topic and the theme that I kind of wanted to launch into today is the passions. And I'll be sharing some of my screens in a second. It's a treatise that St. Thomas Aquinas speaks about in the Summa Theologica. But I spent about 2 hours studying this again today, because I had studied it years ago in Rome when I studied the whole Summa Theologica. And I was just there thinking, how do I incorporate this into a podcast? Because you don't want to make a podcast so intellectual that people don't understand it. And some of the words that you would use here, you're saying, Robert, you've lost me. Because we need to arrive to the ordinary man and woman that could be sitting in their bedroom looking at their phone, and your video pops up, and how are you going to grasp their attention as to the theme that you're trying to introduce them to. And so I'm going to kind of boil it down to layman's terms as much as possible. I want to boil this down. I don't want to be using words you don't understand or Latin you don't understand. But St. Thomas Aquinas had great wisdom, amazing wisdom, which has been lost in the church today. Now, some may criticize scholasticism for being too intellectual. And yes, we can be so focused on the head that we forget the whole human person. But it's important to form the head. It's important to form the mind. Really, really important. And over the last 50 years, we have discarded the formation of our minds in the church. We've discarded the formation of our minds in seminaries, in secondary schools, in Catholic schools, completely discarded the formation of the minds. It's very, very, very sad, but this is where we've ended up. And in doing so, we're witnessing really the sad consequences of that, because one of the things when you don't form the mind, your passions, your sensuality, your feelings take over. They take primacy over your will, your mind, the formation of the mind. And the age-old wisdom of the church is always to be cautious, to be careful of our feelings in our spiritual life. The great masters of the church will guide us and mentor us on our feelings. He's not saint, but he's a great mentor. Jean Curie in the School of Mary, in one of his talks in the Firm Foundations of the Spiritual Life, he was mentioning to us, the greatest moments of spiritual formation happen during moments when you're not feeling, you don't feel anything, or you don't feel the urge to pray, or to do your devotions, or to do Lectio Divina. Those are the greatest moments of formation, because you impose your will over your feelings, your passions. You impose your will, and you strengthen your virtue. And this is the greatest moments that we grow in the spiritual life. I was listening to the podcast yesterday on John Connor's channel, and there was as I've blogged about it before, there was a Curcio guy from Belfast, Paul Curry, who was just speaking about his journey out of drug addiction, his journey out of alcohol, and his journey towards virtue, his journey towards his dominion of his passions. And there's two ways we can learn in life. You can learn the hard way of actually allowing your passions to dominate your life, and to realize, I'm going nowhere. I'm lost. I'm going from feeling to feeling. One day of feeling, I get a high, I feel great, and then I get a low, and I'm going from feeling to feeling. But you're on a treadmill going round and round and round and round, and you're never going anywhere. You're not advancing. So he had the wisdom. The wisdom came to him that you had to relinquish being drawn all the time by your passions, and actually allow your will to dominate, to say, no, this is enough. I'm not drinking. I'm not taking drugs. I'm not sleeping around. I'm not looking at porn, etc., etc. To impose your will over your feelings. And in doing that, you have immense growth on a human level, but also on a spiritual level. You take off on a spiritual level. Now, we haven't taught this. And so, I did a blog about what happened in the Vatican on Saturday, the LGBT apostolate, the movement, and etc., etc. And we need to speak into a society that is so focused on feelings. Oh, I feel attraction to this, then it must be what God has made me do. But like Thomas Aquinas goes very deep into this. Not everything we feel we should act on or act out, or believe that this is the path that God has created us for. And it's very, very important that we understand this. Otherwise, we are destroying age-old wisdom in the church. Not just in the church, but you also go back to the likes of the philosophers that spoke about this a lot. And you'll have St. Thomas Aquinas building on age-old wisdom, because something is true. It is always true, even when it's unpopular. Today, the virtue of chastity is a dirty word. It's completely unpopular. It's countercultural. It's laughed at, ridiculed. Do you know what I mean? Because people see it as something impossible. And yet there's great wisdom in there in trying to teach that. And I suppose we have to think, gosh, how do we turn this around? How do we capture it? Because I remember waking up this morning and saying, what am I going to blog about today? And immediately this theme popped into my mind, speak of St. Thomas Aquinas. And I said, oh, look, this is so high, better off getting a Dominican to do this, because they live, breathe, and eat Summa Theologica. They have it for breakfast, dinner, and tea. You can't really get anybody better than the Dominican to speak about the wisdom of St. Thomas Aquinas. But I thought, look, I'm going to give this a stab. I'm going to give it a try, but I'm going to try to condense it down as much as possible to layman's terms and to give you the wisdom. Just because priests or bishops or people in the church don't live this wisdom does not mean this wisdom isn't life transforming and true. This is the sad thing about it. We're incapable of offering this to the world, because the world say, who are you guys coming to teach us about chastity? Come on, get out of here. Are you serious? Didn't you cover up this? Didn't you cover up that? And I suppose the church has become meek and silent and inoffensive, and let's go away. And so, if you remember, it was last year, the year before, Father Sheehy, he did a kind of a homily about sin and about, normal things in the church, and people got offended. Oh, gosh, it's shocking. People got offended with the truth at Mass. They got offended, and the bishop had to do an apology. I am so sorry he's got offended. He wasn't supposed to be there. He was filling in. He landed some truth bombs, and people got offended. So what? We are sleepwalking ourselves into oblivion because we're not able to offer the wisdom of that the church has from so many saints and church fathers. And St. Thomas Aquinas, not only a saint, but also a doctor of the church. And he's building on the wisdom, the knowledge that across the centuries, that we could, the most successful people live the wisdom that St. Thomas Aquinas is speaking about. It is the secret to success. Discipline is the secret to success. Dominating your passions is the secret to success. People don't realize this. We've immense wisdom in here. But anyway, yeah, Father Ripperger, there's a lot of good traditional priests that do this. But again, speaking to the choir here, speaking to the converted is one thing, but we need to give this wisdom out to the world, to the ordinary man and woman on the street. Because we have, for example, the guts of 800 suicides a year and growing on this island. Majority men. What is causing that? It's something that St. Thomas Aquinas speaks about in the Summa Theologica. It's called despair. I can't cope with this. I don't feel anything. I'm going through a very bad time, and people don't know. Sometimes people don't know what they don't know. They don't know how to navigate despair. Think about it, guys. They don't know how to navigate the downs in their lives. Okay, I didn't get the results in my leaving cert. I've been fired, or I've wrecked my life, and I'm feeling very, very, very lonely, very, very vulnerable. People don't know. People don't know how to navigate what they're feeling because nobody has taught them. The church hasn't taught them. They don't hear about this in a homily. We don't teach them about the passions, the sensualitate, our feelings. We don't teach them how to navigate that. We don't form minds anymore. And for that reason, what you will see on Saturday will end up, and the way the church is going in 20, 30 years, God, I don't know where we'll be ending up, because we are being thrown on the sea of our feelings at the moment, and we're not able to actually give people wisdom. I'm not here in this podcast to give you a set of rules or to preach to you or to do a sermon. I'm here to give you freedom and wisdom. That's what St. Thomas Aquinas speaks about in the Summa Theologica. So let me just bring up some material here. Not my material, but it's what I've been studying, and it may help people. But I want to kind of break it down to you. Don't make it over intellectual. Just try to help you here. So for anybody that doesn't know, I'm just going to go home here. You can get all of the Summa Theologica here on the New Advent website. So Summa Theologica is like the great question and answers manual for Catholics. But it's, as I said, it's not just Catholics. So many people quote St. Thomas Aquinas, philosophers, so many other Christian denominations. He is kind of a staple when you want to kind of reference something on this. And so we're going to go down to the first part of the Summa Theologica and go down here to, let me bring you down here to man, spirit, and matter. And we're going to talk about sensuality and will. So it's, as I said, it's the Summa Theologica, first part, question 81, right? Now, I'm going to bring in some other information here, some other things that people have kind of put together. Again, this isn't my work. This isn't even my wisdom. But if you could learn something, you will learn two ways in life. And I say this to my kids. You will either learn from wisdom or you'll learn from your mistakes. There is no other way. And both those paths will ultimately arrive to the same location. The recovering alcoholic, or who doesn't drink anymore, and the man that has been a pioneer, they're on the same path. One had wisdom given to him, and the other learned through not accepting the wisdom, but seeing that, look, my life isn't governable, so I need to change. And so both will arrive to the same destination. I want you to arrive. I don't want you lost for years. I want you to arrive properly. But the only way you're going to do this is to understand your passions and to understand how those passions interact with your will, with your mind. If you think about it, Fasting. What is fasting? Fasting is you stop eating, right? You don't eat on a Friday. Uh, Fasting has nothing to do about giving up food. The food isn't the thing in the fasting. People don't realize this. It's nothing. Fasting is all to do about strengthening your will. You're going to say, I'm going to do a water fast on a Friday. It's nothing to do with the food. It's all to do with strengthening your will, your virtue, your mind. If you think about it properly, and we don't realize this when we're striving, when we're building our spiritual life. It's not just fasting. It's, so many men are caught up with, the passions, concupiscence, lust, and so forth. And yet they're not strengthening their mind and their will adequately in this area. And then they're struggling. So we need, fasting is such a good tool to strengthen your mind if we use it correctly. But again, so many people are kind of lost because we haven't given them the wisdom. We don't give them this beautiful wisdom. I'm just going to go here to some of it. Saint Thomas kind of details out 11 basic passions, and there is the concupiscible ones, and then there's the irascible ones. So the concupiscence, you break them down into love, hate, desire, avoidance, or pleasure, pain, sadness, and then you have hope, despair, fear, daring, and anger. So the inclination towards a good is love. And so the passions per se are not bad things per se. Okay, so if you see somebody that's very, very beautiful on the street, you see a beautiful woman, and you think your heart is drawn towards this beautiful creature, per se, that experience, what you're experiencing, isn't anything wrong. That's just your natural passions. But as we go on, it's how those interact with our will, which is very important that we kind of distinguish here. So the inclination towards a good, love, amor. Inclination away from an evil is hate. Motion to a possible future good is called desire. Motion away from a possible future evil is called avoidance, fuga. Possession of a good is called joy, pleasure, and possession of evil is called pain, sadness. So these are the concupiscence ones, where the object of the concupiscence power in general is a sensible good or a sensible evil taken absolutely, the pleasurable or painful as such. And then you have irrational passions, where the object is an irascible appetite in general, is sensible good insofar as it is difficult to attain, and sensible evil insofar as it is difficult to avoid. These passions all presuppose concupiscible inclination towards a sensible good in question, or away from a sensible evil in question. So, inclination towards a difficult future good that is possible to attain is called hope. So, we hope someday you will buy a house. It's a difficult thing, but it's something that's possible to attain. Inclination away from a difficult future good that is impossible to attain. Despair. Inclination away from a difficult future evil which is impossible to overcome. Fear. Inclination towards a difficult future evil which is possible to overcome. Daring. Reaction to a present or past evil which something to be avenged is called anger. So you have all of these various passions, of the soul. Since the passions are not properly human, it might seem that these categories, moral good and moral bad, do not apply to them. St. Thomas concedes that this is so to the extent that we consider the passions just in themselves. However, we must also consider them insofar as they are subject to the command of reason and will. This is really, really, really important. This is why it's important to form your mind so that when you're experiencing anger, despair, you know, joy, sadness, you can impose your mind and your will on what you're experiencing and move forward correctly, act correctly. After all, even our bodily actions can be morally good and bad, and the passions, as St. Thomas puts it, are even closer to reason and will themselves than the external members are. So the passions admit a moral good and bad insofar as they are voluntary acts of a sentient appetite, and they are voluntary either by the fact that they are commanded by the will or by the fact that they are not stopped by the will. It is in this sense the human passions differ from animal passions. Some, such as the Stoics, have seemed to claim that the passions are bad, as that one of the main goals of the moral life is to extinguish passions. However, if read carefully, we are instead close to the Peripatrics, who said the passions are good when moderated by reason and bad when not moderated. Summing up the ad 3, St. Thomas says, insofar as the passions of the soul go beyond the order of reason, they incline one towards sin, but insofar as they are ordered by reason, they pertain to virtue. I suppose, just stop sharing for a second. And this is where the formation of the mind, the formation of healthy habits, discipline, are one of the greatest things that you can give to your children. If we think about it today, children are completely they're completely controlled by their passions. 1 minute they're angry, 1 minute they're happy. You have to keep them content. But what have we done over the last decades, especially in the West, is continually bombard our children with affirmation of their passions. They're bored. Mommy, 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 I want this. Mommy, I want that. You give them a tablet or an iPhone or something like this. Watch that. Go and watch that. Keep them. Then when they get bored, oh, mommy, 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 I'm hungry. You give them some sugary food, some kids meal, something that will, the sugar rush. And people might say, well, it's just they're kids. They're kids. Why? What's so wrong with this? But a small error at the beginning ends up being a large problem at the end. And if we continuously raise our kids to be continuously living via their passions, their feelings, you'll arrive to somebody that's in their 20s or 30s that just rides the waves of their passion, because that's how they've been brought up. I don't feel well. I don't feel like doing this. And then people don't have the stamina and they don't have the stamina to actually follow through with working through, a project or a course or something like that. They don't have the willpower to do it. Uh, uh, and it's even worse in society. We see this continuously being played out in our education. In our education, we would have had a very scholastic education in the past. Both Protestant and Catholic would have focused on the dominion of your passions and the formation of virtue. But today, we're saying, well, look, you're going to do these things, and we're just going to educate you to how to mismanage your passions in a kind of a safe way so that you don't get STIs and you don't get pregnant. But if you get pregnant, don't worry, you can always abort it and then so forth. And don't worry about love or long lasting relationships. And there's always divorce there, etc. We've ended up a generation that has never been so wealthy and yet are completely unhappy, so many of them. And again, you just have to look at the top of the pyramid that we see of people killing themselves out of despair. But the people caught up in drug addictions, cocaine, alcohol, porn, the porn industry is booming because people live from experience to experience. Friday night's coming. I go out with my friends. We go out in the town, etc., etc. Wake up Saturday morning, Sunday morning, got a headache, a hangover, go back to study or to work on a Monday, and then ride the feelings, right? And I wouldn't blog about this other than the fact that the people are really suffering because nobody has given them the wisdom of how to dominate those passions, those feelings, that love, that hate, despair, or avoidance, pleasure, pain, hope, despair, fear, daring, anger. Nobody has actually taught them, okay, well, you're experiencing this. But you need to put your will and your mind now into play here to dominate and to form healthy habits and to grow virtue. And in the Christian world, in the Catholic world, we have oodles of wisdom in this area. The great people in the world are people that have a strong control over their passions, that can dominate them. And so that even when they don't feel, they still continue on. They let their mind and their will drive them forward. If you think about learning a language, it can be very monotonous for the first 100 lessons. You're learning off words and tables, and so, oh, this is so boring. This is so boring. It was like I vividly remember in school learning French, and I just thought I'm not good at languages. It wasn't like I wasn't good at languages. I wasn't good at training my mind. Nobody had taught me. But when you're plunked in a different country and nobody speaks English and you have to learn the language, well, lo and behold, you'll learn the language and you'll be good at it. So what changed? Well, what changed is you had to build your mind and your will to engage in actually learning something, and that's really important. I suppose the wisdom here that I want to impart to people is, and I really didn't want to make this over intellectual, but the church today is in eclipse. This is no joke. We have eclipsed the truths of our faith, and we've eclipsed the wisdom of the saints and the doctors of the church. And we're witnessing now hundreds of actual suicides. But look, I can't mention. I'm seeing young people here in my own county, towns beside me. You know, as I said, we're not a poor country. Nobody's dying of hunger. Nobody. Nobody is left on the street without a roof over their head. Nobody. Willingly. If you want some place to sleep in Ireland, you will get it if you look for it. I mean, we're not this desperate. We're not living during famine times in Ireland where people would close the door and take to the bed and just die off because there was no hope, there was no food, there was no nothing. We're pretty prosperous. We have a lot of resources. And yet we have failed to form a generation on how to navigate uh, their passions, their sensuality, their feelings. And they think that's reality, that what I feel is real. That's how I feel. So that's the reality I need to live my life by. And it's so distorted. It's completely distorted. And we're wondering what's going on in Ireland. I do hope that we will get back to kind of giving the 101 basics of our faith and the wisdom of our faith to this generation so that they can be nourished and fed by it. But we can't live in a church where we're all ruled by heart. I heard, I know the synod and synodality was supposed to be private, but uh, I heard what was actually said during some of the synod sessions at closed door. And and one person said to me, they're very good at playing on the heart. Very good at playing on the heart. And such went into a church and they weren't received very well. And somebody said something nasty to them, and and sadly they took their life. And we need to be different how to do this. We need to be careful on this, etc. Oh yeah, we need to be more inclusive. We need to be listening, church. Yeah, yeah. No doubt about it. But guys, there are 800 people here in Ireland taking their lives every year. Never walked into a church. We didn't cause that in the sense that we didn't. It's not coming from the church at this moment in time, thankfully. It's coming from our society. Look at our society, guys. And the church has wisdom to offer the society, but we're afraid we'll offend people by giving them this wisdom. You will offend them. You will. But some people might listen, because I know many alcoholics I have offended. Many alcoholics. I would say to them, you're an alcoholic. I'm not. I'm not an alcoholic. It's only a drink. You're an alcoholic. I know many alcoholics I've offended. People know my story. Sometimes the truth hurts, but they'll come back to you when they get clean and say, well, I know, Robert, I would give out to you a few years ago, but you know what? You were right. I said, yeah, I know I'm right. It's not that I'm right. I'm just giving you the truth. I'm giving, and the church is afraid to give this truth. It is it is so incapable of boiling it down and giving to them. What are we preaching on a Sunday? The church of nice. We are sleepwalking our sheep off the cliff. Oh, you want to get married, and so do you believe in the church? No, no, we've been living there for a few years, and we just like the church, and we want to come in here and get married because this is it's near the place where we're going to have the reception. So like, guys, please, what's going on here? Anyway, I didn't want this to go on too long, but I just wanted to kind of focus in, and I put a links below so that you can read through how St. Thomas speaks about the interactions of passions and our mind and our will. The passions per se, good, healthy things. It's good to feel love. It's they're not bad per se, but how we allow them to move our will, move our mind. That's a big thing. If you're angry, be very careful. A manager once at work says, Robert, whenever you're angry, never write an email. Go home, calm down, have a sleep, come in the next day and act carefully. And it was a great tip of wisdom. Never act on anger. Or be very careful how you act when you're angry, because sometimes your anger can lead you to acts that you didn't intend to do. You hit somebody, or you road rage. God, like the list is long of stupid things that people do when they're angry, or stupid things that people do when they're in love, or stupid things that people do when they're in despair. But these are our passions. These are our emotions. You have to take them in your hand, look them over, rummage them, study them. Say, "Oh, okay, I'm feeling anger now. How am I going to act in this situation?" And so sometimes the wisest thing when you're over emotional is to never make decisions when you're emotional. Never, never. And yet, this is age old wisdom. This is Thomas Aquinas wisdom, Summa theological wisdom. Because he was very good at taking the nuts and bolts of things and kind of combing them out and laying them out and allowing you to think them over. We're not giving this to the world. Our secondary schools, if you said, we're going to talk about St. Thomas Aquinas today, and most kids in Catholic schools in Ireland would say, Thomas, who? Who's he? Summa Theologica? Well, they wouldn't have a clue. They maybe if they went to Dominican school they would, but most of them haven't an iota, not a clue. Because we're all about waving rainbow flags in schools now instead of actually teaching wisdom of the church. This is the truth of it, guys. And then we're wondering why our society is becoming polarized, why our younger generations are depressed, why people are falling into these passions and allowing them to be dominating their lives, because nobody's given them the wisdom. Nobody's taught them. The church is in eclipse in Ireland because they're afraid to offer this. Chastity is a dirty word. You don't speak about it. Never spoken about. Because you get a letter from the bishop. Sorry, we didn't want to offend anybody by calling people to. Look, and again, as I said, everybody feels kind of disordered passions. This is the part and parcel of humanity. All of us have some disordered passion or some disordered inclination. Every single one of us. That's the nature of our fallen humanity. It's the nature of our path. That's who we are. It's ingrained in every single one of us. There doesn't exist a special group of people that have a special disorder of their passions. We have all, to a bigger or smaller extent, disordered passions. All of us. It's called humanity. But we have to know how to order them towards the good, the truth, and the beauty. This is really important, guys. And so anyway, yeah. Look, I'm trying to. I hope to do more podcasts, kind of boil this down, and to help people, and not to make it over intellectualized, because St. Thomas Aquinas really is for everybody. It's a sad thing. He's not just for the elite and the people that know Latin and they go to school. He's got immense wisdom. Actually, I did an interview with somebody who's using St. Thomas Aquinas for business and stuff. He's just got so much wisdom there. And if you actually study him, study the passions, what he speaks about the passions, well, you can actually say, oh, this makes sense. I'm feeling despair. It's a feeling. It's a feeling. Even when it's you're feeling despair because of external forces that might well be you've been diagnosed with terminal illness or whatever, and you could be very low and very in despair, and God, who wouldn't? But it's not the end, and this is what we need to, even when things are very very difficult, we don't let these passions overwhelm us or destroy us or drive us to actions that we shouldn't be taking. Anyway, if you have any questions there, I'll stay on for 5 minutes. You want to ask me anything on this topic, but again, I hope other people pick it up. We need to start bringing this wisdom back into the church. We need to start breaking down this and offering it to a new generation, because I guarantee you, our younger generations don't know what they don't know. They don't know. No, we're not teaching them. Virtue, call to virtue, which is, guys, virtuous people that have discipline are successful people. If you set somebody up for life to be successful, the fruits will be there. The thing is, we're not leading people on this path. And so people are learning the hard way. Or why not learn the easy way? This is what's really important. Anyway, yeah, I understand. But look, it's easy to point fingers at bishops and so forth. But it's better to point fingers at ourselves. What can we do? How can we impart this wisdom more to the world, to the church? Because, as I said, that it's not to focus just on one group, but there are many lost in that alphabet group, LGBT group. Many lost, many truly lost, and it's to give them the wisdom that look, there is a greater acceptance in the freedom from what you're experiencing. And so many people are afraid to offer this to the church and to the world. I mean, this ideology is so strong, guys. It's amazing, its foothold in the church and in the world. Truly amazing. Truly amazing. Imagine a child today. I feel like I'm a girl or I feel like I'm a boy. So we give you hormones. I said, hold on. Or even operations, treatment, removing parts of your body based on a feeling. And the adults have lost the plot in allowing this to happen. I feel I'm attracted to some person, so this feeling is my reality. Not always. We can have many different levels of sexual attraction. Do we act on all of those? No. We form our mind and our will to dominate what we are feeling and to order it towards what is that good, true, and beautiful. Because Satan will mimic what is good, true, and beautiful. We're always moved. We're always drawn towards an apparent good, true, and beautiful. But sometimes it is, just dressed up. It's a mirage. It's a dead end. As I said, the growth in our spiritual life is all towards discernment. And yeah, we're not teaching this generation, new generation, sadly, how to discern. The wisdom of discernment, the understanding of their passions, and how we can dominate them with our mind and our will. We're not teaching them. We're looking on as spectators in our society, which is becoming childless. We're aborting 10,000 kids a year, childless, dominated by money and career. One of the highest consumers of cocaine in Europe now. Uh, and we think this is helping us. No, it's not. People are living in despair because nobody has shown them the way out. And hopefully this video will kind of capture people's imagination on how to form your mind and your will. I hope someday uh, people will return to forming minds in the church. Minds. We're very much focused on the heart at the moment. The synod was a masterclass in manipulation of people's hearts. And that is from a synod participant. A masterclass in manipulation of the heart and an eclipse of mind and reason. Yes, we have to change our tone and be careful how we speak, uh, and make sure everybody's welcome. Yes, but but you have to also give people truth. Look, I could welcome an alcoholic to my house. Uh, I could welcome an alcoholic to my house, but if I put down a boundary, you're welcome to my house, but you're not welcome when you're drunk. That's not excluding him. That's telling him the truth. You're all the time welcome, but you're not. I'm not having you in my house if you're drunk. Or a drug addict. I'm not having you in your house if you're high. Do you know what I mean? We have to be able to give these truths. Everybody's welcome, but it has to be on God's truth. It has to be based on the principles of our faith. What is the church here to do? That's why you have a platter of Marian prophecies. Our Blessed Mother couldn't be so clear. If you think of Fatima, she gave a message to kids. As a father, do you know how kids sometimes, I'm going a bit off course here, but it's an interesting segue. You know how kids are so truthful. If you're in a shop and a kid sees somebody who's farts, for example, and the person farts, and then the kid will turn to you, Daddy, Daddy, that lady farted. It's like, oh yeah, okay, but you don't have to say that and embarrass the person, right? Because kids are so truthful. They're just open. They're just, you know. And Our Lady revealed some truths to some very simple kids in Fatima. And they didn't invent them. She gave them some truths, very stark, very, very stark about the situation of the world and the church ignored them. She asked for some specific things to be done, and the church ignored them. And when the third secret of Fatima wasn't released, what did Our Lady do? People don't realize this. What did Our Lady do when people say, la, 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 we're not listening to you? We're not listening to you, Blessed Mother. Please just change your tone. She revealed herself in Garabandal with the same practical message to four very uh, rural girls in a very Catholic time in Spain in the early 1960s, also telling the church, you're going in the wrong way. And the church looked around, who are you girls to be telling us, church, we're going in the wrong way, that we are bringing people to hell? No, 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 no. Not approved. Not a chance. Did we go in the right way? Think about it, guys. And what happened? We allowed the church. We allowed our passions in the church to dominate us to such an extent that Satan is running rings around us. Rings around it. This is the sad thing. We need to get back to some church discipline, to some discipline in our education, because if we don't, we are failing another generation. Sometimes discipline is good because it's hard. You have to dominate your passions, but you get great fruits at the end. As I said, two men dealing with alcohol. One decides, I'm not going to drink. I'm going to take a pledge and not drink my whole life. And all of the good benefits, good health, saves money, etc. Another man becomes an alcoholic, drinks for 20 years, and then realizes that, I need to get off this. This is destroying my life. So he stops drinking. They both arrived to the same point, but one used wisdom and one used the school of hard knocks, which will teach you wisdom anyway. But like, guys, if we taught this wisdom more with our, with passion, with zeal, wouldn't we change so many lives? And again, if we taught people to understand, to rummage on their passions, to understand, to dominate these passions, which is why our asceticism, the ascetic practices of dominating our passions, I'm hungry and I've decided not to eat. I'm going to dominate this passion. I'm going to impose my will and my mind over feeling hungry. I'm not going to die. I'm going to have a glass of water. But it's an exercise of dominating a passion. That's what fasting is. It's nothing to do with giving up food. I mean, Christian ascetic fastism is not about the food. It's about dominion of our passions. It's an exercise in the dominion of our passions. Think about it, guys. And the saints knew this is important, because if you can't do this, when you're tempted, you'll just give in to the temptation. You'll just, but you need to form a strong mind and a strong will. And we're not doing that with this generation. It's not happening. We haven't taught them. This is the sad, sad reality. And we're wondering why. What can we do? We've given them everything except wisdom. Think about it, guys. We've given you can't money can't buy wisdom. Wisdom is free, but we're not giving it to them. We give them every experience to satisfy their passions, but we won't give them the discipline needed to dominate those passions. It is truly sad. Because this is where we've ended up. We need strong leaders in the church that'll actually give this wisdom out again. We need to get rid of those bishops that'll keep apologizing when some truth bombs are landed in the church. God, if we'd had a few more priests that spoke out against abortion in 2018, what would have happened? Instead, we had priests here voting for abortion, voted for abortion. I kid you not. And we went from 2,000 to 10,000. Does anybody think that's a good thing for our Irish society? People say, oh, people were traveling. Well, hold on a second. We went from one evil to an evil that's 5 times bigger. That's what has happened in Ireland, and the tragedy of it. But anyway, look, pray for the church. And my bishop is Archbishop Francis Duffy, but again, I don't know his opinions, and I've never met him in person, so I don't know much really about what he thinks on various subjects. Or I have nothing, not going to criticize him online or anything like that. So I'm just saying, but like, guys, we need to strengthen our education, strengthen the church, and to give this wisdom back to the world. Anyway, I went on a bit too long here. Passionate topic, as you can see, but I hope I inspire somebody listening in this video to research, to dig into this wisdom of understanding your passions and how they interact with your will and your reason, and how they move your will and your reason, and how you can learn freedom from this wisdom. If you know how to dominate these things, you will be extremely successful. As I said, if you're learning a language and you said, oh, I don't feel like studying, and you study anyway, your mind and your will is on this project. You're going to do this project, you're going to do this course, I'm going to do it, whatever, and you've put your mind and your will there, you will have great fruit. Instead of saying, I don't feel like it, I'm going to watch telly. You will sit in front of the television all your life. You will never get out of that rut of constantly being dragged down by your feelings. And also in the spiritual life, you will take off in the spiritual life if you dominate your passions, your feelings. You will take off. Don't let them be your driver. Let the truth drive you. God bless you. Take care. Bye-bye.